They say the soul lives on, that death is not the end. But what if two small souls returned, wearing new faces, and remembering how they died? This is the story of the Pollock twins, two little girls who may have crossed the veil twice. In the quiet English town of Hexham, in Northumberland, lived John and Florence Pollock, a devout couple, deep in faith and grief. For on May 5, 1957, their two daughters, Joanna, aged 11, and Jacqueline, just 6, were struck by a car and killed instantly on their way to church. The driver had been high on drugs. An accident, they called it. But the Pollocks felt something greater had been torn from them. John, the father, began to dream, not of death, but of rebirth. He believed his girls would return, that their souls were not lost, only waiting. And then, a year later, Florence became pregnant. To everyone's surprise, she gave birth to identical twin girls on October 4, 1958. They named them Jennifer and Jillian. But these twins, they were anything but ordinary. From the very beginning, the twins displayed strange behavior. They asked for toys that had belonged to their dead sisters, toys they had never seen. They recognized family members they had never met. And most chilling of all, they recalled the accident. Jennifer, the younger of the two, had a birthmark on her forehead, identical to one Jacqueline had. Another mark on her waist, just where Jacqueline had a scar. Coincidence? Or something deeper? At just 3 years old, the girls were walking past a parked car when they suddenly froze, gripped in terror. "They're coming to get us," Jennifer screamed. When asked who, she simply said, "The car. It's the car that hit us." Was this reincarnation or shared delusion? Their parents watched in awe and dread. Each moment the girls lived, they seemed to be reliving someone else's death. What if the past never truly leaves us? What if it waits, hidden in the recesses of the soul, only to be recalled when the time is right? This is the story of the Pollock twins, who did not just return from death, but carried its scars. As Jennifer and Jillian grew, their behavior became unsettling. They began to act out memories of a life they hadn't lived, a life they claimed to have lost. One of their earliest memories, at just 4 years old, was the sound of the car. The children spoke of it as though they had been passengers. But it was not just a memory of impact. No, they described the moments leading up to it, the feeling of motion, the screech of tires, the sharp pain. Jennifer, still a small child, would speak of a specific detail, the car's front bumper, and how it had scraped her leg just before she died. But it wasn't just the accident. The twins also spoke about places they had never seen. They described the house of their former life, Joanna and Jacqueline's house, with eerie precision. The layout, the stairs, the bedrooms, even the colors of the walls. Floors they had never walked on, windows they had never peered out of. But most chilling of all, the twins spoke of their older sister's clothes, clothes they had never seen in this life. John Pollock, in his grief-stricken faith, believed in the miracle of reincarnation. He thought his daughters had been returned to him, the souls of Joanna and Jacqueline, reborn. But Florence, though she loved her new children, began to feel the weight of the mystery. Every day felt as though the past was knocking at their door. insisting that memory be honored. When the twins reached the age of 5, their memories only deepened. They recognized the cemetery where their sisters were buried. Despite having never visited it in this life, they would go there, standing silently at the graves, touching the tombstones, as if offering silent apologies. And there, too, they would speak words that sent shivers down their parents' spines. "I used to live here. I used to play here." But the strangest part? Jennifer and Jillian were not just remembering. They were acting out the life of Joanna and Jacqueline. Jennifer would always hold a doll, the same one that Jacqueline used to play with, and Jillian would wear the same dress that Joanna had worn on her last day. But they weren't simply playing. No, they were living the memories, not as if they had heard the stories, but as if they had been there. For those who saw it, it was as though time had folded itself in two, as though the past had not been lost, but was waiting to be remembered, to be reenacted. But as the twins continued to remember, their strange behaviors deepened. Was it a coincidence? Or something else? Something darker? The Pollock twins were not the only ones who remembered. There were others. Others who saw it too. The twins had been reborn, or so it seemed. But the question remained. If their souls had returned, then what of the ones who had already gone? As Jennifer and Jillian grew, the memories, the behaviors, became too vivid to ignore. They continued to recreate their sisters' lives, with unsettling precision. The games they had played, the conversations they had shared. But then, something darker, something even more chilling, began to unfold. The twins began to remember more than just their previous lives. They began to speak of events that had never been shared, details that only the dead could know. Jennifer once looked at her mother, Florence, and said with a voice far too calm, "I remember when you cried." Florence, her heart heavy with grief, asked, "Why did I cry, darling?" Jennifer's answer, "Because you were sad. Because we were gone." Florence froze. The air felt heavy, cold. For a moment, it was as if the world stopped. But the most unsettling moment came one evening, when the twins played outside, just as their sisters once had. As the sun began to set, Jillian suddenly turned to her sister Jennifer and said, "Let's go back home, before it's too late." When Jennifer asked, "Before what's too late?" Jillian's response chilled the very air. "The night comes. The night. The night that had taken Joanna and Jacqueline. The night they would never forget. The night they had crossed over." It was as though the souls of the dead had returned to finish what was started. And yet, the twins were not simply playing. They were living the past, experiencing it all over again. The accident, the pain, the fear. Every detail of that night was etched in their minds, as if they had never left. John Pollock believed. He believed that this was proof that his daughters' souls had not perished, but had returned to him. They had come back from the other side, from death itself. But what of Florence? Florence, she began to wonder. What if this was not the return of her daughters, but something far darker? What if the souls were lost, trapped in a cycle of rebirth and death, repeating their fates forever? And the twins, did they remember the life they once had? Or was something else living through them? The Pollock twins lived their lives, but the mystery never truly faded. The echoes of the past still whisper in the corners of their minds, a life they could never truly leave behind. And perhaps there are places where time is not linear, where souls wander, forever searching for a chance to return.